Thanks. Just
There you go.
recording in progress. There we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Malibu Divers, for hosting me. I'm a photographer, FAA Certified drone pilot, and some of you may know me as the Malibu artist on social media and YouTube. My actual name is Carlos Gauna. It's funny because there was recently a big shark coverage this week over a big study that came out, and my name was credited in most of the press kits, but they didn't know who it was because everyone knows it as the Malibu artist. It's kind of funny. But I have lived in California for the last 17 years. Most of that time has been here in Malibu. I now live in Ventura County. I moved to Camarillo after in 2019, after the fires and all the change that came to Malibu in that time. But I'm still in Malibu almost daily. I'll be there tomorrow shooting. And it really is a place that I just have grown to love because of the beauty that we have. And for me as a photographer, I will tell you a big disclaimer here. I am not a diver. I'm not certified. I've scuba dived. I've scubaed one time in my life, even though I spent probably a total of 3 months last year in the Sea of Cortez. And I just got back from the Sea of Cortez a few days ago. I do somewhat free dive. I do take take the camera underwater as well, but I'm not certified or professional. I'm not a great swimmer. That's just the truth. But it's very interesting because photography above the water translates very heavily when you take the camera underneath the water. And what I do specifically is photograph marine life, wildlife, sea life from above, specifically the drone. And that's really what I focus on film shoots, because normally we have a good assortment of divers. I've got some legendary divers I'll be filming with in a couple weeks up in the Northeast. And they kind of like it because I'm not in their space. I'm doing my own thing for the work. So this evening, I want to show you not just the beauty of this place, but I want to explain how photographically I captured those images, maybe tell the story of how some of those images were captured. And then I also want to get into answering any of your questions you have about photography and how my process works. And then talk a little bit about how I built my YouTube channel and how I now work with supplying places like Nat Geo, BBC, and Discovery with some of my niche coverage of marine life from the air. So mainly, I just want to showcase the beauty of our backyard. So I have a video that I want to present to you guys real quick that kind of touches on what I've been filming in Malibu. Every time I go shoot sunsets, sunrises in Malibu, I always bring a couple cameras and set them up for time lapses. I fly the drone, and so I've got quite a big archive of just Malibu. And this video is going to play straight off of YouTube because I just uploaded it. It looked really choppy whenever I uploaded it and just played it through Zoom. So if it looks really choppy, I apologize. It's really smooth when you watch it on YouTube, and I can give you the link to it if you want to see it in better quality. But let me play that really quick, and I will show you the beauty of Malibu. There we go. Can you see that? Yes?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
The surf sounds loudly. You might recognize some of these locations. Hopefully it's not too choppy right now. I don't know if you guys can hear the music. The music's supposed to be synced with it. You probably can't, can you?
No music.
Ah, that really messes it up. It's a much better presentation with music. That's okay. I don't know where the share option is for the music.
It should be.
There it is. I gotcha. There you go. Well less than half a mile from the shore. It's much better with music. Lost the first half.
Do we want to watch it again with music?
I'll send you guys the link at the beginning. The music synced up with the motion. It really took a lot out of it when you couldn't hear the music. But there we go.
They shared your YouTube link in the chat, so we can check out your channel.
Okay, I will be launching that video in just right after the show, after we finish here.
Awesome.
But I'm going to go back to sharing the screen here, and for some reason this interface is not. I get them so mixed up. There we go. Can you see my screen?
No, we can't.
You can't. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. All right, we're good. So that's the beauty of Malibu. That's why I spend my evenings photographing that stuff. And one of the things that that I like to communicate to folks is that because I'm not a diver, when I do get certified, and I'm talking to Barb's about how I'm going to get certified and hopefully get that plan of action going, what I do above the water is only going to make me a better photographer in the water. Recently, I presented an IMAX at the New England Aquarium to the Boston Sea Rovers, which is a very, very big dive community up in the Boston area. And they were pretty surprised that I'm not a diver as well. But the whole reason that kind of the mantra of this is I want to bring a different view so that maybe what you learn above the water is going to translate to what you shoot in the water. And my journey started with shooting above. You know, this is, for example, this is one of my favorite locations, Piuma. I shot that with the 200 millimeter lens to get that compression. If I remember correctly, it's like a 30-second exposure, maybe 40-second exposure. But if you guys have never been up there, I totally suggest going up to Piuma and watching what we call cloud or fall. County Line, I shot this at County Line. This is shot with a 600 millimeter lens to get that compression. You should have seen me this day. I was just running like crazy to get the sun lined up, because you'd think that the sun goes down, but if you actually watch the sun, it goes left to right when it sets. So I'm in the wrong position, and I notice, the sun's going to set before the boat. So I had to run like 50 yards with a giant tripod. It looked hilarious. Here's another example of compression at 200 millimeters. I love shooting 200 millimeters for some reason, landscape shots. It really just brings everything into the frame. You can see one of my favorite elements, and you can use this underwater as well. It's my favorite compositional element. That is natural framing. If you can train your eye to see natural frames all the time, you're going to be a better photographer. You're going to find compositions that just meet the eye. And so I'm constantly looking for little windows like this, where I can just frame a subject and bring it into focus. Another location, El Matador. And this is something that I always discuss with photographers, because the art of photography these days, I don't know if you guys have seen the general landscape of what you see everywhere from portraiture and even landscape photography now, is you notice that everybody's shooting wide open. And if I have I'm sure I have quite a few photographers here, but what that means is basically opening up that aperture to like f1.8, 2.8, opening it up to the widest that your lens goes. And so the byproduct of that in photography in general is that every image starts looking the same, because everything ends up being shot at f2.8. The biggest thing you see is in wedding photography and in portraiture, you just start seeing the skies turning white. That's why all wedding photography now, I'd say 80% of it is what we call blown highlights, blown white skies. And that's because the art of stopping down, shooting something at f16 like this starburst that you see here can only be done if you shoot this at f16. To get the real natural colors of the sky, which is blue and beautiful colors like this, you have to stop down. Now underwater, it's important because, shooting wide open, you get some weird things that happen on the edges of the camera. So, you're shooting f11, you're much likely to get your frame to be sharp from end to end underwater. Malibu Pier. I'm sure I've run into some of you at the Malibu Pier. There's many views of the pier that I enjoy, and it's one of my favorite piers to photograph anywhere in the world. It's just so iconic. It's just incredible. There's different views you can get there. I especially love it at low tide, to capture, the reflections of low tide there. And I'm going through this section really fast because the video section, the shark stuff, I know probably more interesting. The night photography stuff in Malibu. This is so important to me personally, to preserve our night skies. And in Malibu, we're fortunate enough to still have some night sky. And you can get the bioluminescence. You can get the Milky Way. This was shot on a 35 millimeter lens, f1.4. So at night, you need to open up at night, right? But in order to get that Milky Way really big, in order to get that blue to come out of the water on the bioluminescence, you have to shoot it at 1.4. What I do is I take it a step further. I'm sponsored by a company called Star. They gave Skywatcher, and they make telescopes. So they make a device that is essentially it's a star tracker. And what you do is you put your camera on the tracker, and it basically spins in the opposite direction of the Earth. Now, what that allows you to do is it lets you take long exposures of the Milky Way, because once you get to, say, 36 seconds on a long exposure of the Milky Way, you start seeing the star trail. The Milky Way becomes fuzzier because of the Earth's movement. So if you're going to get into night photography, it's a good investment to get into looking into a star tracker, because you can really open up your ability to take photos at night, especially if you go to dark sky areas. Another cool thing in Malibu is, the bioluminescence. I love the bioluminescence. We have it right now, actually. I haven't been out there in a while to shoot it, but sometimes you get some really cool bioluminescent images there. I like it whenever it's overcast like this, because you just kind of, the bioluminescence kind of reflects into the mist sometimes. Now this other one here, this shot takes a little bit of planning, but I shot that with a Skywatcher telescope and my camera attached to it. And there are a couple locations in Malibu where you can just shoot this almost. I mean, you could probably shoot it now. We have a pretty big moon right now still. But the flight path of LAX allows us to capture images of airplanes going through the moon, which is fun. Once you do it once, you kind of, it's a little bit of addicting too sometimes, because if you can get the International Space Station coming across, that's a really cool shot. And if you want to ever plan that out, I can help you with that too. Again, night photography. The photo on the left is what I call a selfie. That is on the Star Tracker as well. I shoot these images just to demonstrate that you don't have to go too far out of LA to get the Milky Way. And it's pretty incredible. And we're very fortunate here in Southern California that we have such a large population center, but you can still see the Milky Way with the naked eye, even 30 minutes outside of LA. You go to Death Valley, you can go to Joshua Tree and go to darker places. But we're very fortunate, because if anybody from the East Coast knows how fortunate we are, because there's no stars on the East Coast. You can't see anything. So this is one of the reasons I love Malibu. I love Southern California for this. This image on the right, that is SpaceX. And that's my hobby. When SpaceX launches occur, I try to find some kind of epic location to film the launches. And in the video, I'm sure you saw a couple of launches that I put into the video. So, you get some pretty cool shots, especially if they happen right after sunset, like this did. Then this bottom image, basically what I've done here is at Leo Carrillo Beach, you can line up this lifeguard tower with the North Star. Now, if you shoot the North Star for even 20 minutes, 30 minutes, in this case, this is about 40 minutes, you photograph that for 40 minutes without moving your tripod, you're going to get those circles. So that's a cool creative element you can pull off in Malibu. Just find Polaris, the North Star, and take pictures at night. You'll get those star trails that look pretty cool. Still in the night, pretty much anywhere along Mulholland Road on a Milky Way night, you can get this view as well. And the Malibu Pier. I started doing photos with the drone a few years back, and I started doing these at night. And my journey with the drone really expanded my creativity and the ability to capture images that otherwise I couldn't capture in the past. But there's a powerful thing in the way that you can get a different perspective of photography and hone in on some skills that you didn't know you necessarily had. Because once you start viewing things from that bird's perspective, composition, lines, you lose a little bit of that depth that you have at eye level of a three-dimensional depth. So you have to start finding angles and locations that give you that three-dimensional depth. So now I'm going to go over to Point Dume here. This place is pretty unique for me. I've photographed at Point Dume probably more than any place in Malibu. Point Dume is easily one of the most special places on the planet for me. That's what I actually got married at the base of Point Dume. My wife and I got married there, but it was while I was standing atop the point that my journey to filming great white sharks started. Now, the thing about Point Dume is, it is, in my opinion, second to San Ignacio Lagoon, which was amazing. It's amazing if you haven't been there. It's the best place in the world to see a gray whale. It really is. The gray whales pass within 20 yards of that point, and they're still passing through there. They're going through in pretty big numbers this year. But if you stand on this point right here, you get a pretty good view of Malibu, you know? And it was one day that I was standing right there one evening. I was filming the gray whales, and I had exhausted all my batteries, and I was just gutted. I'm a photographer. I had a beautiful view there. And the reason I was gutted is because I saw what would still to this day probably the largest great white shark I've ever seen in my life. And I was standing right atop that point, looking down just beyond those rocks that you see in that frame. And there was a great white going after a seal or a sea lion. And I had no way to photograph it. I'd exhausted my batteries on the darn whales. But I went home that evening. On the drive home that evening, I got to thinking, and I came up with this wild idea that what if, what if I've been focusing on the wrong species? And, let me see here. Can you see my screen? You can see my screen, right? Okay. So I want to show you real quick. Where is this thing? Right here.
We lost your screen, by the way.
Yeah. I'm going to share a different
Okay.
screen now. And the thing about being at Point Doom and you see these gray whales, and I want to make sure that when I present this, that the sharks don't take precedence over the whales. The whales are incredibly beautiful. And I don't know why the share option is not here anymore. There it is. Share screen. Okay, so here you go. You should be able to do this. So this is why I go to Point Doom. I just returned. I came back a couple of months ago from San Ignacio. Now the gray whales from Point Doom, you can see this, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So the gray whales, they start their journey down in San Ignacio Lagoon. That's about 800, 900 miles south. And they have the longest migration of in the mammal kingdom. And in San Ignacio down there, this is me just a couple months ago filming the gray whales, and notice how lovable these creatures are. And they come right up to you and they want you to scratch them because they have these itchy barnacles on them, So I got my camera. I said, I'm not even taking pictures now. I'm like, I'm totally in this moment wanting to touch them. And then you'll notice here, I quit touching one and then she raises back up and wants me to keep touching her. And so I'm trying to get the photo and she's like, okay, touch me, please. Okay. And here she says, okay, touch me. And so I'm able to capture shots like this of the gray whales. And so this is how my shark journey started, filming gray whales, because I love these animals so much and because I'd go to Point Doom to film them. When they leave, this is real-time footage. When they leave San Ignacio, they surf out of the waves. It's unbelievable. And eventually they end up right here at Point Doom. And atop that point, because I was atop that point filming gray whales that day for 3 hours, I had run out of batteries. And so when I'm up there, that big great white shark shows up and I have no means to photograph it. But it gutted me, but I got home that night and I started thinking about maybe I was just focusing too much on the whales. Maybe I should just start looking for sharks. And so that's basically what I've done. Can you see my screen? Is it back? It is, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
And so I've started filming sharks from above because the gray whales led me to the shark. And the thing about filming sharks from above is that it's given me the opportunity to see sharks in a way that hasn't necessarily been seen in the past. And what I mean by that is that I'm talking to a group of divers here. And yes, I've been to Guadalupe and I've dove with the great whites there many times. I've had the camera underwater with the sharks, and they're bumping my camera and all that. And that's great. That's an awesome experience. It's something I encourage everybody to experience at least once in their life. There really is no awesome feeling better than seeing a great white shark hands length away interacting with you. But you're not getting a natural observation of that animal through that means. And so what I've started doing is filming the sharks from above, noting their movements, their particular behaviors that they do, and discovering behaviors that have never been seen before, and they're helping science. So I'm co-authoring a few research papers now in a couple different countries regarding not just great whites, but tiger sharks as well. Here's an example of that behavior. Now, the lines that you see here in the back, those are called vortex trails. Every shark leaves those because of the way the water movement goes when sharks are moving. But do you see something interesting here? It's making a perfect circle. And the more I film great white sharks along our coast, the more I notice these circles everywhere. Sharks making circles everywhere. What's going on? And that was the natural question to the scientists. That's the natural question for any filmmaker that would be observing this. So we looked into this, and the leading theory, and I believe this to be very correct, is that the sharks are sleeping. The sharks sleep very similar to dolphins. And so but why in a circle? Well, if they go to sleep going straight, they're going to run into something that they probably don't want to run into. So the circle movement happens. And right here, the paddle boarders wake up the shark, and you can totally see the shark is now awake. And then something happens that rarely happens. The shark reacts and then turns right back into the subjects. So I believe the shark was sleeping here because normally the sharks don't go head on into a subject just like that. How they went directly into the paddle boarders there. That usually doesn't happen. Usually a shark will go away and take a different path and come in behind them. See how the shark is coming in behind them now? That's typically what would happen if there's a surfer there with a shark that's awake. The shark would say, oh, it's a surfer. I'm going to go back behind the surfer and check this out. Okay, that's not something to eat. Move on. But because the shark was asleep, it's just like me. I get grumpy when I wake up from my nap. Maybe he was a little grumpy, right? It would explain, for example, some of the bites that we've seen, specifically recently down in Del Mar. That's kind of the leading theory, is that it was just a clamp down and a release on the lady that was bit in Del Mar recently. Likely the shark was sleeping. But all in all, that's the kind of behavior that I'm seeing from above as a filmmaker, as a documentary researcher, of the great white sharks off of our coast. Now, much of Southern California is a nursery for juvenile great white sharks, from newly born young of the year, as we call them, to sharks that are 3.5 years old, in the 8 to 10 foot range. Those could be considered juveniles. The thing that I'm seeing right now is larger sharks are appearing. We're talking about 14-foot range sharks. They're much, those sharks have graduated into eating marine mammals. So that's a whole different thing than a juvenile. So great white sharks, they're typically found just behind the surf break, regardless of size. It's not just the juveniles there, but mostly it's the juveniles in Southern California. However, I've filmed a 13-foot adult female, well, not adult, almost adult female in the surf within 20 yards of the shore. So it's, they do come in close. The big ones do as well, but not as much as the juveniles. And the juveniles are there for a variety of reasons, mainly for shelter, food, and the temperature of the water is warmest there. Juvenile white sharks haven't developed their thermal internal warming system as much as an adult. So they're ectotherms, so they rely on the warmth of the water to keep them warm. Whereas once they get to be adults, they can regulate their temperature based on on adapting to the water temperatures. But this shark here, if you can see this is actually the stinger of a bat ray. So this shark has just ate a bat ray, which is the biggest telltale sign that you might be near a shark. Is if you are in the water and you see bat rays around you, there's likely going to be a juvenile shark near you as well. Yeah, you know, food. Go to In-N-Out Burger, you're probably going to see a lot of humans there too, right? So going into this behavior, here's something that's very cool. And you can see some of this video on my YouTube stuff as well, and on some other programming. But something I've noticed with sharks, and this might be more important to some of our free divers and scuba divers, because sharks like to eat kelp. And that's kind of new. We didn't really realize that, but I'm capturing a lot of footage of sharks in and around kelp that are just like this one, just getting their veggies. And, you know, this one just goes straight at it. Look at this attack here on it. Oh, whoop. So what's going on? Why are they doing this? We don't really know. You know, sometimes it's pretty spectacular. They see some kelp and will want to go munch down on it like this guy. But I do see them in kelp beds a lot, sharks. And traditionally to divers, to free divers and spear fishermen, they've kind of always thought, no, there's no sharks in the kelp. But I can tell you firsthand that I see sharks in the kelp quite often. They're very, very camouflaged in there, but they do go in. The one thing I'll tell you is that they don't necessarily go into thick kelp for it. So if there's a lot of thickness, it's very rare for them to go directly into it. Although we do have camera footage off of a dorsal fin of a shark going into thick to chase a seal. So it does happen. It's a complete fallacy to think that there's no sharks in the kelp zone, because there's definitely sharks. I got them eating kelp. One of the things that I do see as well is, and we're talking about behaviors that, including the kelp stuff, that you don't normally see if you have a diver in the water. Like this kind of behavior you wouldn't see if you have a diver trying to film this. But dorsal fin use, we're finding out that the sharks are using their dorsal fin as much as they use their nose or mouth to investigate objects. Now, sharks can actually taste things through their skin, which is a very vital, important thing here. They might be using their dorsal fins to touch whatever they're investigating to see if it's something they can eat. And so as I film more of this dorsal fin behavior of sharks, it's telling more of a story of maybe there's a lot more to learn about these creatures, because when we're not watching them through traditional means. So again, if you have a diver here, that shark is likely paying more attention to a diver than it is paying attention to a piece of a floating seaweed kelp, right? So there he goes, striking it with his dorsal fin. But again, imagine if you're a camera person, if you're a scuba gear and you're in the water and this shark is doing this natural behavior. It's not going to do this. It's going to be more focused on you and who is this intruder in my space, right? This shark turns around and grabs that kelp and eats it. So this is really monumental kind of behaviors that the sharks are displaying that really haven't been studied or seen in the wild as much. We know scientists have known that they're curious creatures and they have various means of observing and investigating their surroundings, but to actually see it happening in real time can give us a lot of insight as to how they would react maybe around a surfboard or around a person. Traditionally we think that the sharks, we've all heard of surfers get bumped by a shark. Well, we've always thought that they bump with their nose, but they might just be bumping with their dorsal fin. And this is just a beauty shot here. It's going to take a little bit. Oh no. So here you go. This is just a piece of seaweed, and watch this shark go right up to it and just snatch it with its dorsal fin. right out the water. Just a mundane, simple detail, but it just, I think cinematically is just beautiful to show what sharks do daily, and how they could just grab a piece of kelp like that, or I guess a seagrass, whatever it is. They do interact with trash as well. Unfortunately, I have lots of footage of them interacting with what humans have left in the water, and that's not always good. More and more, I'm finding sharks with giant leaders and fishing hooks on them. They are being targeted by a couple groups of people. A lot of the footage that I've supplied to the Department of Fish and Game and to the state of California, who recently just instituted a no chumming zone across the whole California coastline, because people have been chumming. Which brings me to a topic that I always discuss. Everybody always wants to know where I'm filming great white sharks. And I can tell you that I film great white sharks from San Diego to Point Conception. Pretty much any beach you go to in those areas will have a great white shark within a mile of them. I can tell you that much. This weekend I'm tagging with the Cal State Shark Lab. We're tagging sharks down in Del Mar. Del Mar is one of the aggregation sites that has been getting a lot of press lately. There's quite a few sharks there. There's also an aggregation site up in Santa Barbara. The sharks you see in Malibu and the ones I film in Malibu are what I consider more of a traveling along the 405 kind of sharks. They don't tend to stay there that we know of. There's a couple places that I have suspected are going to be kind of hotbeds. I just need more data for it, because the shark nurseries, they kind of shift year in and year out based on various factors. But there's a couple locations in Malibu. And then a third one of them is well known on Sunset Point there by Gladstone's. That is a nursery for sharks. There's still shark activity in those areas, but the difference is, is it prolonged activity, or are they going through and being transient sharks? So that's really what I wanted to present to you guys. What's the future for me look like? What am I doing? That's Dr. Greg Scommel, one of the leading scientists on the Northeast of the United States. We did some tagging, instituted a lot of drone. I've consulted with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, and we are actually now using drones to tag the sharks and be more effective in tagging them. Personally, I am not a fan of what OSearch does, or some other folks who will fish the sharks in or raise them onto platforms and put a 2,000-pound animal on a platform where it's not meant to be on a platform. The best way to tag a shark and get that data is to leave them in the water, and to do it through a means like Dr. Scommel does. It doesn't require drilling into any dorsal fins. Once you pull a drill out and you miss up that beautiful dorsal fin, I cringe. Even when they do that on Discovery Channel, I won't be associated with any of that stuff. There are better ways of doing it, and the drone is one way to help get sharks tagged in a more humane way. And yes, that's a shark eating a dolphin there on the right side. But that's all I prepared for you guys. I didn't really have a super big outline for you guys. I want to take some questions and answer your any questions you have. And let me mention that this is something I'm seeing a lot more. I didn't talk about the fish hooks and stuff, but long line fishing is still occurring off the coast of Los Angeles, and the effects are being seen. We see sharks like this one here. You're wondering what that is. That's his dorsal fin bent up completely. He got stuck in a long line and broke his dorsal. And I've been looking for that shark for now 2 years. I'll tell you, if it's still alive, it's going to be a big deal. You will see a big research paper done about it, because to show the resiliency of the sharks. But I don't think he's survived.
Well, thank you, Carlos. really beautiful. I guess we're gonna open it up for pictures. There is one question in the chat about how does the shark hook the seaweed on its dorsal fin?
By luck, if you've ever touched a shark, they're not smooth. So there's kind of a sandpaper feel to them. And their skin basically has thousands of little grooves. So you can actually, a piece of grass like that that's on the dorsal would be pretty easy to get stuck.
Cool. So if you guys have any questions, you want to come off mute or you want to raise your hand?
I just came off mute. If I can
Hey,
ask,
Matt?
I've
Yeah.
got like 2 or 3. First off, beautiful stuff. Holy heck, that was great to watch.
Thanks.
Do you think the dorsal fin through the patch of seaweed could also possibly be maybe thumping it to see if something's more solid in there, to see if maybe possible prey might be using the kelp as a hiding place, and it could still go for the kelp, kind of like just having a Caesar salad, or maybe you get lucky and you get a Caesar salad with chicken.
Well, they're pretty curious animals. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that much. And everything you said there is probably a possibility. The sharks do, and they're very curious creatures. That's something that's very visible from the air. Even if you've ever been in a cage with one, when you see one, you make eye contact with them, their beautiful blue eyes. You know that they're curious about you, but it's not a curious like I want to eat you. I mean, you get next to an 18-footer underwater, it's pretty spectacular, but at the same time, it's almost peaceful to observe. And I think personally, and the science seems to back this, sharks know what we are. So when a shark comes and sees a human, for the most part, the data shows they know what a human is. So why are some of these attacks occurring? What's going on with those particular sharks, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's when education is important. That's whenever you have to realize that there's other elements involved that cause negative encounters. One of those things is a shark knows who you are, but if you go into water that's very murky, say there's been fishermen chumming in that water, say there's been a lot of current in the water and there's a lot of fish and bait balls and things like that, and the sunset is happening and the water, it's darker, well then, yeah, you can be mistaken for a seal. So those instances are whenever we talk about mistaken identity, but a shark in the open water knows what you are.
And follow-up question was, what's your gear of choice on the drone? Do you usually use the Mavic 3 Pro, or do you use a bigger rig from time to time?
I have a whole fleet of drones. I have a Mavic 3 Pro, a Mavic 3, Air 2S, Phantom 4 version 2, M30, which is basically a Mavic that's 3 feet, the M30.
A meter wide diameter. Yeah.
And then I have a drone that I can land on the water, a couple of those. And then what else? Quite a few drones. I have a lot of drones. So my drone that is a workhorse, my favorite drone ever made is a Phantom 4 version 2. Because that thing it's just buttery smooth. I could always get some buttery smooth with that. Photographically, I think the Mavic 3 line is the best drone on the market right now. I don't fly the Inspire 2 anymore. That thing was long in the tooth, just sits there collecting dust. And then the Inspire 3, for my needs, it's just too big. I mean, I'm going on an expedition in 10 days. Traveling with a Mavic, with a Inspire 3 just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, have fun legging that case up to the top of the point.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And
so if you're a drone pilot, you cannot lift, you cannot take off from the top of Point Doom. That is a protected environment.
Yep.
So here's the thing about drone photography. No, it all matters where you take off from. Okay. So you can take off from the parking lot at Point Doom. You can take off from the beach at Westward Beach. or the parking lot at Westward Beach, but you cannot take off within the actual Point Dume. Like if you're hiking to the point there, just to be clear, I've never flown my drone from the point. I've only flown from the parking lot to the point.
Yep, and
So-
that is a good point, because I also was very early in on the drone fun and suffered through the FAA's 333 and then the Part 107, all of that fun while they took their time to figure out how people could actually monetize from drone work. And it just, it hurts me so much when I see so much footage and stuff happening from areas that I know full and well they are not Part 107 pilots, and I'm just like, oh, but it's awesome that
but you
that
don't need your
were-
Part 107 to fly over
No.
an area. You just,
Right.
you don't need it. But I get what you mean. I get what you mean. Yeah.
Yes, no, and it's awesome that you're that yes, you do everything by the books, and thank you for that, because
Thanks.
nothing makes me madder than a weekend flyer out there smacking their new drone into the Long Beach lighthouse, which happens a lot.
Yeah. Ugh, drives me nuts.
Hey, Carlos, most of these sharks look pretty big. Are they, or are these juveniles?
Well, you get in the water with a 7-foot shark, it's still pretty big. That's a
Okay.
juvenile, but
Can
I
you
get a
figure
lot
out
of
their
these.
size by, is there a way for you to calibrate their size?
I have a way, yeah, internally, that I do in post. I have other ways where once you kind of have seen so many sharks, you kind of and you get to a certain flight level, you can understand the size.
Quick question about the drones.
Yeah.
What sort of lenses are on there? I imagine they're autofocus, I imagine they're zoom, and I imagine you control them from the box where you're flying the drone. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. The
Oh,
lens
they-
depends on the model,
Ah.
depends on the drone. So every drone has a different lens. For example, the Mavic 3 has 3 different lenses.
Oh.
Whereas the Inspire line, which is a tank, you can remove it and put like a traditional DSLR kind of mode. You can use different lenses on that. But most everything is transmitted right to my tablet. I fly with a tablet. I don't fly with the smart controllers. I hate the smart controllers. I just got one with my Mavic 3 Pro, and it just sits there collecting dust because it's too small of a screen.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Guys, just come off mute. You want to ask a question? Is there anything you haven't shot yet that you really want to? Is there on your wish list?
I got a pretty big list of stuff I've shot, but let me see. I want to shoot the polar bears, and I want to shoot the Norwels. And I was going to shoot the Norwels a couple years ago up in Greenland. I mean, 3 years ago, but then COVID happened, and I had to scratch that plan. But yeah, the polar bears is good. I'm a huge lover of the Northern Lights in the Arctic, so I'm up there all the time photographing the Northern Lights. I love that.
Nice. Have you seen sharks interacting with the whales?
I've seen sharks and whales together, but they don't necessarily interact. Last week, wow, time flies. I filmed a mako shark, a pretty nice size mako shark, down in off the coast of La Ventana, which is down by La Paz and the Sea of Cortez. And there was mobile arrays near it, and then there was tuna near it. So you often see sharks interact with other species. It's always kind of a luxury to have that footage because you don't see it very often. I will tell you that I probably have the only footage in the world of a great white shark and a whale shark together, both underwater and above. And so that is kind of a feather for me in my hat, because that's a tough shot to get, a whale shark and a large adult great white literally cruising together. Pretty amazing.
Was that Sea of Cortez?
That was in Guadalupe Island.
What about
Yeah,
when, go ahead.
They in Guadalupe is closed now, but it's a pretty cool it's a pretty cool place.
When you see a shark, a great white near paddle boarders or surfers,
Mm-hmm.
do you ever get nervous and want to tell them?
Most of the time I can't tell them because I'm too far away. Early on, I used to get nervous. I do still get nervous when it's kids. So if you go through my YouTube channel, you're going to see a lot of footage of kids and sharks together. And a Good Morning America ran a thing yesterday morning using some of that footage, and it's always very dramatic and always very scary. But honestly, the cool thing about filming the sharks here in Southern California is most of the time, I have a kid, he must be 6 years old, on a boogie board, and there's a shark just doing zigzags, a V pattern through there. And they do these V patterns through the beach. And what they're doing is they're looking for stingrays. And basically I have a kid swimming and the shark is going in this V pattern, and the shark never deviates from its original V pattern. That tells us that it could care less about the kid. It's just searching for the bat ray. But I did get nervous. I did get nervous. I don't know if you can see that. I was going to show you some footage.
Please
can you see that?
It was gone now. Yeah.
Oh, you could see the shark?
Yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that. Okay. What happened to my Zoom? There it is.
Every once in a while, when I'm at the surface at the ocean and a drone goes overhead, I think of you, Carlos. I'm like, is that him?
Oh, here you go. I was talking about that whale shark footage. Here you go. So this is from the cage. Let's see. There's a whale shark. Beautiful in the cage. And, the great whites are on the other side, but there's the great white right here. And it just travels right by whale shark. So there's a lot of footage of just different stuff that happens in the sea that you could just blows your mind every single day. I can't tell you how many times a fisherman, a scientist has said, "Oh, there's not this here. This doesn't happen here." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, have you ever looked from the air?" And we get it. But the Sea of Cortez just returned from there. This footage. Have you guys ever seen mobula rays jumping?
Show, please.
There you go. So these are all stingrays. So this was last week, but I hope you can see that.
Yeah, it's a little choppy, but
Why
We're
are
talking
they jumping? Why are they jumping?
Yeah, the leading theory is that they jump to impress the females so they can mate. So look, I mean, you can see it jump there. I mean, this is an epic jump right here. Look at that. Yeah, so these stingrays they're mobula rays, but they're known for their jumping behavior. See that? There you go. It just incredible. Now you can dive with them. If you're a free diver, you can actually experience this from underwater. And so what I do on my tours down in Sea of Cortez is I use the drone to guide the free divers to a location where they can interact with these animals. And it's a pretty cool, it's always pretty cool when they come out of the water and they're just amazed by what happens. But I could go forever with footage. I know we're running up on time here, but do you have any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you go to school to learn to be a photographer?
No, I'm actually just fully self-taught. I have a master's degree in public relations and an undergrad in United States history. So not really photography. I just was just self-taught photographer, and I got started storm chasing on the plains of Oklahoma, and that's really how I got my start with photography, and just being a photographer for the college newspaper. But
All right.
yeah,
Well, thank you, Carlos.
Thank
no
Anyone-
you.
problem.
Yes, thank you very much.
Wonderful.
No problem. Okay. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate that.
You're
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank
No
you.
problem. All
Thank
right.
you.
So if you guys have any questions at all, you can always reach out to me. My email is themalibuartist@gmail.com. And I am happy to answer any questions or I'll probably have more questions to ask you about diving and stuff.
There
'Cause
you
that's
go.
my path.
You know how to reach me.
I will say I'm getting certified and I'm like not brave. And so they're being so great and supportive for me. So when you were talking about everybody's got to go with the sharks, I'm sitting here laughing. I was like, I'm not ready for that. Sharks, I'm not there yet, but hopefully.
All right. Well, I am hosting a Cia Cortez free diving and it's photography tour next year on a yacht. We're going to do 2 of them. So if you want to be in on the know on that one and join me again, we swim with orcas, we swim with whale sharks, we swim with mobile rays, all that stuff. Just let me know and I'll put you on the list. And we're only taking 20 people next year. So 2 different boats, well, 2
Which-
different trips, but 10 people on each boat.
Which
Nice.
dive operator are you working with?
I
this-
work with Nautilus.
Nautilus. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Perfect.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody coming.
Thank
Please
you.
Stay
very much.
tuned and we'll have a new presentation next month. I believe we're going to talk about undersea mining, super important conservation topic. So, and again, thank you everybody for coming out. And if you have any other suggestions, just let me know and we'll see about putting it together. It's good
Thanks,
seeing you
Barb.
all.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Carlos.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You.
Thank you.